Snow covered an abandoned amusement park where a rusted Ferris wheel stood silent in the wind. Nearly 30 feet above the ground, a German shepherd was trapped inside a tilted gondola. A former Navy SEAL climbed the aging frame and brought the exhausted dog safely back to the snow. But once rescued, she refused to leave and pulled him toward an empty ticket booth. 3 old bells rang beneath its roof, and the dog stared at the doorway as though someone should have been there. Why was she still waiting for a promise no one had kept for 5 years? Where are you watching from today? Stay to the end. Share what this story means to you, and please like and subscribe as we work toward our first 1,000 subscribers. By 7 in the morning, Silver Lantern looked less like an amusement park than a memory left outside for winter. A thin layer of snow covered the game booths. Dead strings of bulbs moved between leaning poles. On the children's carousel, painted horses stood beneath a skin of ice. Beyond them, the old Ferris wheel rose above the pines, gray and still, like a clock that had forgotten what time was for. Cole Tanner entered through the chained gate, carrying a survey bag, a flashlight, and red hazard tape. At 49, Cole was a former Navy SEAL who now inspected old public structures for Snowmere. He preferred work that answered honestly. Rotten wood sagged. Loose steel complained. People could say they were fine while quietly coming apart. Cole knew how to move toward danger. He had never become equally skilled at staying after it passed. The stopped watch on his left wrist reminded him of that. His purpose that morning was clear. Silver Lantern would be dismantled beginning in 4 days. Cole had to mark which structures could come down by machine, which needed bracing, and which areas must remain empty. Luke Danner, Snowmere's public works foreman, had marked a narrow, safe road across soil that looked frozen, but remained soft underneath. Cole had reached the old ticket booth when he heard it. Clang, clang, clang. 3 metal strikes came from above. Cole stopped. For a moment, Silver Lantern vanished. He was beside a steel training compartment years earlier, hearing 3 knocks beneath alarms and shouted orders. A teammate was trapped inside. Cole followed the sound and brought him out. Later, after both men left the service, that teammate called more than once. Cole watched the phone ring and told himself, silence was kindness. The winter wind moved through the abandoned park. Then the sound came again. Clang, clang, clang. Not a loose cable. The rhythm was too even, followed by the same careful pause. Cole looked up. A German shepherd stood inside a Ferris wheel gondola nearly 30 feet above the ground. The full-grown female was black and warm tan beneath a dusting of snow. Her right ear stood straight. The tip of her left leaned outward. She held her body low inside the tilted gondola, raised one front paw, and struck the metal wall 3 times. Then she looked down. She did not bark wildly or throw herself against the opening. She waited to see whether the world had answered. "All right," Cole said. "I hear you." The dog was a stranger to him, and he was a stranger to her. For now, their relationship rested on one fact. She had asked to be found, and Cole had understood enough to stay. He called Dale Foster, captain of Snowmere's volunteer fire crew, then closed the path behind him. While help was coming, Cole circled the Ferris wheel without stepping beneath the suspended cars. The machine told its story in pieces. The lowest gondola door had been opened during an earlier inspection. A temporary counterweight was gone, and the parking brake no longer held with full pressure. Before dawn, mountain wind had pushed the uneven cars nearly a quarter rotation before a corroded gear caught. The dog had not moved the wheel. She had entered at the wrong moment, and the failing structure had carried her upward. A soft ticking came from the brake housing. Not failure yet, but not a promise. The German shepherd struck the gondola 3 more times. Cole tapped 3 times on a support post with his flashlight. The dog stopped. Both ears turned toward him. That small response changed the rescue. She was frightened, but she was also listening. Sometimes grace began with nothing more than one frightened creature realizing someone had heard. Dale arrived with 2 firefighters and a ladder truck. At 56, he had a gray mustache and the calm manner of someone who knew panic made equipment heavier. The ground ended the easiest plan. If the truck moved closer, its right stabilizer could sink beneath the snow and tilt the ladder. Dale could hold a climbing line from below, but someone would have to use the Ferris wheel's maintenance ladder. A gust crossed the park. High above them, the gondola shifted by inches. The dog flattened herself against the floor. Cole put on a climbing harness and checked every buckle. Dale clipped the safety line to the rear attachment point. "You see movement in that gear. Call me down," Cole said. Dale tested the rope. "You hear me call. Listen the first time." The humor lasted only long enough to loosen the fear. Cole climbed, testing every rung before trusting it, as rust fell beneath his gloves. Halfway up, the ticking from the brake stopped. The silence was worse. Cole waited. Nothing moved. Above him, the dog watched through the gondola opening, amber-brown eyes fixed on his face. When he reached her, she backed into the far corner. Her chest rose quickly, but she did not bare her teeth. Cole did not grab her collar. He lowered himself, turned his gaze slightly aside, and placed one gloved hand against the gondola wall. Then he tapped 3 times. The dog's breathing changed. Slowly, she crossed the narrow floor and stretched her muzzle toward his hand. Cole let her smell the glove, the rope, and the cold metal of his stopped watch. Fear did not make trust less precious. A hard gust struck the wheel. The gondola rocked. Instead of lunging away, the dog pressed her shoulder against Cole's leg. "I've got you," he said. The words came easily in dangerous places. Cole wondered why they became harder in ordinary rooms. He slipped a wide rescue loop beneath her chest, secured it to his main line, and signaled Dale. The firefighters took the weight slowly, while Cole guided her past the edge. For one moment, her hind paws searched for a floor no longer beneath them. Cole kept one arm around her ribs. "Easy, girl. The ground is still there." When Cole's boots reached the snow, the German Shepherd landed beside him, legs stiff with cold and fear. She leaned against him until her balance returned. Only then did Cole check the collar. Dark green leather, a scratched brass buckle, an oval tag. Piper Pine Road. Edith Rowan. "Piper," Cole said. At the sound of her name, the dog looked up. Cora Mills, Snowmere's county animal welfare officer, arrived with a blanket and explained that Piper had been reported loose several times in 2 months. The few residents outside the fence formed conclusions faster than facts. One man said Edith Rowan was too old for a dog that large. Another suggested Piper should go directly to a rescue center before something worse happened. Cole did not join them. He wrapped the blanket around Piper and watched what she watched. As soon as her paws were steady, Piper turned toward the Ferris wheel. Her gaze settled on the lowest gondola, now hanging several cars below the one that had trapped her. A strip of old blue knitted cloth was caught beneath its seat. Before Cole could examine it, wind rushed through the ticket booth. 3 copper tubes, newly uncovered when the demolition crew removed old boards and vines, struck one another. Clang, clang, clang. Piper pulled toward the sound, not away from the people, toward the empty booth. Dale returned 20 minutes later with Edith Rowan in his truck. Edith was 81, small and straight-backed beneath a dark plum coat. Snow gathered on her white, chin-length hair as she crossed the safe path with a chestnut walking cane. Her steps were slow until she saw Piper. Then they became certain. Edith lowered herself with difficulty and checked the dog's ears, paws, throat, and breathing, before touching her cheek to Piper's head. Piper stood still, then pressed close without jumping against her. That was not the greeting of a neglected animal. It was the restraint of a dog who understood the body she loved. Edith finally looked up at the Ferris wheel. She saw the blue cloth beneath the gondola seat. The color left her face. Cole asked what Piper had been trying to find. Edith kept one hand on the dog's collar. She thought Megan was calling. Cole glanced toward the silent ticket booth. "Who is Megan?" Edith watched the copper tubes moving beneath the roof. The person who promised she would come back. The wind stopped. So did the bells. Edith said nothing more, and Piper remained facing the empty booth as though, somewhere behind its broken window, a promise was still said nothing more. And Piper remained facing the empty booth as though, somewhere behind its broken window, a promise was still waiting to be answered. The veterinary clinic in Snowmere occupied 2 rooms behind the village pharmacy. By mid-morning, its windows had fogged from the heater, and the air smelled of antiseptic, wet wool, and the faint pine scent carried in on winter coats. Piper lay on a folded blanket beneath the examination table. Dr. Aaron Shaw, Snowmere's 46-year-old veterinarian, moved around her without hurry. Aaron had dark blonde hair tied at the nape of her neck, and the quiet confidence of a woman who had treated frightened animals in barns, kitchens, pickup beds, and once in the church vestibule during a blizzard. She checked Piper's heart, gums, paws, and joints. The German Shepherd watched every movement, but she did not resist. When Aaron touched the shallow scratches along Piper's front pads, the dog pulled one paw back and looked toward Cole. That glance did not make Cole her owner. It made him the last person who had answered when she called. Aaron cleaned the scratches and wrapped both front paws lightly. She found no serious injury, only exhaustion, cold stress, and soreness from standing too long in the tilted Ferris wheel car. "Rest today," Aaron told Edith Rowan. "Short trips outside, no long walks, no stairs if you can avoid them, and no returning to amusement parks." The last instruction carried enough dry humor to soften the room. Edith stood beside Piper, with one hand resting on her cane. She had not removed her plum-colored coat, as though she feared someone might decide Piper's future while she was getting comfortable. Cora Mills had brought a county animal welfare vehicle, but Piper refused to enter it. She planted her bandaged paws at the rear door, turned her head away, and would not be pushed or bribed. When Cole opened the back door of his old pickup, Piper studied the seat, the floor, and him. Then she climbed inside without being asked twice. Edith noticed. "So now she trusts you," the older woman said. Cole closed the door gently. "She trusts the truck." Edith gave him a look that suggested she had been alive too long to accept a weak excuse, merely because it was polite. Cole drove toward Pine Road with Edith in the passenger seat and Piper resting behind them. The German Shepherd did not sleep. She sat with her chest against the seat back, looking through the rear window toward the northern edge of Snowmere. Silver Lantern could no longer be seen through the trees. Piper kept looking anyway. Pine Road narrowed after the last row of village houses. Snow lay thick beneath dark green pines, and the tire tracks became fewer. Edith's home stood near the end of the road, a pale yellow cottage with a steep roof and blue-gray shutters. The front gate leaned inward. Cole saw the problem before he stopped the truck. The lower hinge had pulled partly free from the post. The latch sat low and required 2 fingers to lift while pushing the gate upward. For a younger hand, it was inconvenient. For Edith's swollen joints, it was a daily argument. The walkway had been cleared, but only from the porch to the driver's side of the gravel path. Snow remained piled along the other half, showing where Edith's strength had ended before the work did. Inside, Piper moved with the caution of an animal returning home after something had gone wrong. She sniffed the rug, the chair legs, and the narrow hallway, then walked directly to a water bowl near the kitchen. The bowl was full and clean. Beside it stood a stainless steel food dish with Piper's name painted in faded blue letters. A measuring cup rested in a sealed container, and several portions had already been divided into labeled bags. Cole had seen neglected places. They usually told the truth through smell before anything else. This house smelled of cedar, tea, clean dog fur, and the lavender soap older women sometimes used because it reminded them of someone who was no longer there. Near the back door, a basket held 3 folded towels, a grooming brush, paw balm, and a flashlight. A rubber-backed runner stretched from the kitchen to the living room so Piper would not slide into Edith's legs. On the refrigerator hung a veterinary calendar. Appointments were marked in Edith's narrow handwriting. Beside it, a plastic medicine box held Piper's joint supplement and heartworm tablets, separated by day. There was no carelessness here. There was care everywhere, arranged so carefully it had almost become a defense. Edith removed Piper's leash and watched the dog drink. Only after Piper settled on a rug did Edith begin making tea. Cole noticed the unopened pill bottle beside the kettle. The pharmacy label was dated 11 days earlier. When Edith tried to lift the lid from the tea tin, her fingers slipped. She caught it with both hands, set it down, and pretended she had changed her mind. Cole reached for it. Edith covered the tin with one palm. "I can open my own tea." "I didn't say you couldn't." "You reached." Cole withdrew his hand. The difference mattered to her. Perhaps dignity was sometimes nothing grander than waiting to be asked. Cora arrived 15 minutes later, carrying a blue notebook and a folder. Her short salt and pepper curls were damp with snow, and tortoiseshell glasses framed eyes that missed very little. She examined the gate before entering. Inside, Cora did not begin with accusations. She checked Piper's bowls, medication, sleeping area, and veterinary records. She asked Edith about feeding schedules, exercise, and the 3 occasions Piper had been found outside the yard. Edith answered every practical question clearly. Her voice changed only when Cora opened the folder. Cora explained that Edith's age was not grounds to remove an animal. The county did not separate people from their companions simply because their hands had weakened or their birthdays had accumulated. But Piper had left the property 3 times in cold weather. The latest incident had ended with the dog trapped above the ground inside an unsafe structure. That could not be ignored. Cora offered Edith 3 days to create a voluntary safety plan before the case had to move into a formal county review. The plan needed 4 things: a repaired gate, regular exercise support, an emergency contact if Edith fell or became ill, and a way to stop Piper from returning to Silver Lantern. Edith listened without interruption. Then she looked at the folder as if it were a hand reaching across the table. "People always begin with paper," Edith said. "Then they explain that what comes next is only temporary." Cora closed the folder rather than pushing it closer. "If Piper is safe here, she stays here," Cora replied. "But love does not make an open gate safe." Piper rose from the rug. She walked to Edith and placed herself sideways across the older woman's knees. Her body remained loose. She did not growl, bare her teeth, or stare Cora down. She simply stood where Edith could feel her warmth. The gesture changed the room more than any argument. Piper was not guarding property. She was standing with the person she recognized as home. Cole saw Cora notice it too. He also saw that affection did not repair hinges. "I'll fix the gate today," Cole said. Edith turned toward him. Relief appeared for a moment, then vanished beneath suspicion. Cora wrote his name in the notebook. She told Edith she would return the following afternoon to discuss the rest of the plan, then left without making promises she lacked the authority to keep. Outside, her vehicle disappeared between the pines. Cole carried his tool bag to the porch. Edith followed more slowly, Piper close beside her. You could have told her the house was fine, Edith said. The house is fine. You could have told her Piper belongs here. She does. Edith stopped beside the leaning gate. Then why did you agree with her? Cole crouched and tested the damaged hinge. Because the gate is failing. That can be repaired. Yes. Edith waited, knowing there was more. Cole looked toward Piper. The dog stood inside the yard, facing north. A new hinge won't solve whatever makes her leave. Edith's expression hardened. I thought you were helping. I am. You sound remarkably like a man building a case. Cole stood. Snow clung to the knees of his work pants. I'm standing with the truth, he said. The truth is that you care for Piper better than many people half your age would. The other truth is that you cannot run after her anymore. The words were not cruel. That did not stop them from hurting. Edith turned away. For several seconds, the only sound came from Cole opening his tool bag. He hated that part of honesty, the quiet after it, when a person decided whether truth had been offered as a bridge or a blade. Piper followed Edith into the living room. Cole repaired the gate while watching through the window. Edith sat in a high-backed chair near the fireplace. Piper rested beside her, one bandaged paw across the toe of Edith's shoe. When Cole finished, he entered to show Edith the new latch. She could operate it with the flat of her hand, instead of pinching with 2 fingers. Edith tested it twice. She did not thank him immediately. Instead, she led him to the fireplace and pointed to a framed photograph. A young woman sat beneath the silver lantern Ferris wheel, laughing as a much smaller Piper tried to climb into her lap. The woman had chestnut hair and wore a blue scarf. Beside her stood another woman with a silver star pinned to her work vest. Edith identified the younger woman as Megan Rowan, her granddaughter. The woman beside Megan was Beth Rowan, Edith's daughter, and Megan's mother. Beth had managed the ticket booth at Silver Lantern until illness took her life 5 years earlier. Megan had grown up around the park. Piper had been her dog. After Beth died, Megan moved to Alder Glen. Her first apartment did not allow animals, so Piper stayed with Edith. Edith told the story as a list of facts, each sentence folded neatly enough to avoid showing what lay beneath it. Cole looked at the picture. When did Megan last come home? Near 5 years ago. And when did you last speak? Edith adjusted the edge of the frame. That is not the same question. No, Cole said. It isn't. Before Edith could decide whether to answer, wind moved down the valley. 3 faint copper notes traveled through the trees. Clang, clang, clang. Piper rose immediately. She crossed the room, stopped at the front door, and looked back at Edith. Cole understood the sound now. The demolition crew had recently removed the boards and vines covering the old ticket booth. The winter wind had found the copper tubes again, and Pine Road lay close enough for the notes to carry when the air moved from the north. Piper remembers the bell, Cole said. Edith watched the dog standing at the door. No, she replied quietly. Piper remembers the person who stood behind it. Piper waited, listening for a voice that didn't come, and Cole began to understand that the most dangerous opening on Pine Road was not the broken gate he had just repaired. It was a promise no one had found the courage to close. By the second morning, Piper could place her front paws on the floor without flinching. The white bandages remained clean, and the tiredness in her movements had softened into caution. She followed Edith Rowan from room to room, never crowding her, always stopping when the older woman stopped. Cole Tanner arrived at Pine Road shortly after 8, with new hinges, a wider gate handle, and a latch designed for hands that could push more easily than they could pinch. He finished the temporary work from the day before by replacing the entire lower hinge. Then he lifted the sagging gate until it hung square between the posts. The old latch came off, followed by the narrow handle Edith had fought every winter. The new handle was broad enough for her palm. Cole set it higher, added a second lock that required almost no finger strength, and tested the gate until it moved without dragging through the snow. Edith stood on the porch in her burgundy cardigan beneath a winter coat, watching every adjustment. When Cole finished, he stepped aside rather than demonstrating it for her. Edith walked down the cleared path, pressed the handle with the flat of her hand, and opened the gate herself. She closed it twice. "It will hold," Cole said. Edith tested the lock one final time. That is what people say before something proves them wrong. Cole understood that she was no longer speaking only about hardware. Piper waited inside the yard, her dark green collar visible against the thick black and tan fur at her neck. When Edith opened the gate again, Piper did not rush through. She looked at the older woman first. Cole had been thinking about that look since the clinic. A repaired gate might keep Piper home for a day. It would not remove whatever called her towards Silver Lantern. Cole asked Edith for permission to follow Piper's route. He explained that he would use a long lead, keep Piper away from the Ferris wheel, and turn back at the first sign of fatigue. He would not release her, and he would not treat instinct as magic. The dog would be allowed to choose direction, nothing more. Edith resisted long enough to make clear the decision belonged to her. Then she brought out Piper's leash. "If she limps, you stop," Edith said. Cole clipped the long line to Piper's collar. "If she looks tired, we stop before she limps." That answer earned the smallest change in Edith's expression. It was not approval, but it was close enough to trust for one morning. The old woodland path began behind Pine Road and curved north through tall pines. Snow covered most of it, but Piper followed without hesitation. Cole kept the line loose. The distance to Silver Lantern was less than half a mile. Through the trees, the Ferris wheel appeared and disappeared between trunks. That short route explained how Piper had reached the abandoned park several times. It also explained why the copper bell could carry to Edith's house when the wind came down the valley from the north. Piper did not wander. She passed the frozen creek, ignored the scent of a rabbit beneath a fallen log, and continued toward the amusement park. This was not escape for the pleasure of running. She had a destination. At the Silver Lantern gate, Luke Danner was waiting beside a public works truck. Snow dusted the shoulders of his burnt orange work coat. A pencil rested behind his right ear, and a dented aluminum clipboard was tucked under one arm. Luke managed Snowmere's public works projects, including the removal of Silver Lantern. He was not an unkind man, but he trusted written limits more than good intentions. He reminded Cole that the Ferris wheel remained unstable and that no one would enter the marked exclusion zone. Cole and Piper could use the inspected path to the ticket booth. Edith, who was arriving with Dale Foster, would remain behind the second barrier. "Memory does not make steel stronger," Luke said. "No," Cole replied, "but it may explain why a dog keeps testing the fence." Luke tapped his pencil twice against the clipboard and opened the gate. Dale drove Edith as close as the safe path allowed. He helped her from the truck only after asking whether she wanted his arm. Edith refused the arm, but accepted the walking cane he handed her. Piper saw Edith and paused until the older woman nodded. Only then did the dog continue. The ticket booth stood beneath the Ferris wheel's outer edge, safely outside the restricted area. Its blue paint had peeled into thin curls. One window was cracked, and a silver star remained above the door, dulled by 5 winters. 3 copper tubes hung beneath the narrow roof. A light breeze moved them. Clang, clang, clang. Piper's head lifted. She crossed directly to the wall beside the ticket window and touched one front paw to a small brass plate mounted low near the door. Once. Twice. 3 times. Cole looked at Edith. The older woman's face had gone quiet. "That plate was part of the game," Edith said. Years earlier, Beth Rowan had used the copper bell to signal that the ticket booth was closing. Beth was Edith's daughter, Megan's mother, and the person who had kept Silver Lantern feeling warm even after its rides had begun to age. When Piper was a puppy, Megan turned the closing bell into a search game. Megan would point to the low brass plate. Piper learned to strike it 3 times. Then Megan would ring the copper tubes 3 times, hide somewhere near the booth, and wait for Piper to find her by sound and scent. They played the game hundreds of times. At first, Piper searched only behind the booth or beneath the benches. Later, Megan hid near the carousel, beside the game stalls, or beneath the Ferris wheel platform. The signal never changed. 3 taps meant the game had begun. 3 chimes meant Megan was waiting to be found. Piper touched the brass plate again. Nothing answered. The dog looked toward the empty ticket window. Cole felt the meaning settle without needing to turn Piper into something she wasn't. She did not understand abandonment, pride, or years on a calendar. She understood a sequence that had once ended with a familiar voice and open hands. For 5 years, the last part of that sequence had been missing. Edith gripped the head of her cane. She explained that Megan's promise had been made on the day she left Snowmere, but it had not been a peaceful farewell. After Beth died, Megan could no longer walk through the village without seeing places that belonged to her mother. She wanted to leave for Alder Glen, where she had been offered work restoring old signs and wooden fixtures. Edith had seen departure as another loss arriving before she was ready. She had told Megan, "You always leave when someone needs you most." Megan had been 24, grieving and angry enough to use truth as a weapon. "Then keep Piper," Megan had replied. "At least she will not disappoint you." Neither woman meant those words to become the final shape of their relationship. But some sentences did not need to be intended as doors. They only needed to be spoken at the wrong moment and left unopened long enough. Before Megan drove away, she brought Piper to Silver Lantern one last time. She sat beneath the Ferris wheel with the blue scarf around her neck and held Piper's face between both hands. Megan promised she would return and meet Piper beneath the silver lights. The lights had never come on again. Silver Lantern closed not long afterward. Piper had kept waiting. Cole watched the dog sniff the air beneath the booth. Loyalty was often praised because it sounded noble. Standing there, he saw its heavier side. A faithful heart could carry an unfinished instruction for years, never knowing the person who gave it had become too ashamed to return. A gust moved through the park. The lowest gondola shifted slightly against its stop. Luke raised one hand, and everyone remained behind the marked line. Cole used an extension pole fitted with a soft hook to reach the strip of blue material beneath the lowest seat. It took 2 attempts before the fabric came free. The scarf fragment was stiff with cold and age. One edge had faded nearly gray, but the center retained a deep blue thread. Cole brought it back to the safe area. Piper stepped forward and pressed her nose against the cloth. She breathed in once, then again. Her body became completely still. Edith looked away. Cole did not claim Piper recognized Megan's full scent after so many years. The cloth had been protected beneath the seat, and it could still carry traces of a familiar person. The ticket booth, old wood, and the places where the game had once been played. That was enough. Piper left the scarf and moved toward the rear corner of the booth. She lowered her nose to the floorboards and followed a narrow seam where one plank had lifted. Then she began to scratch lightly. Cole shortened the lead. "She smells something," Dale said from behind the barrier. Edith did not answer. Cole crouched outside the weakened section and examined the gap. The scent of cedar rose through it, mixed with old fabric and something faintly oily. Edith's eyes fixed on the board. Cole asked whether anything had been stored beneath the floor. The question changed her posture more than the cold had. Luke inspected the section and confirmed that the booth itself had already been braced. He allowed Cole to remove one loose plank, provided everyone else remained back. Cole worked carefully. The old nails resisted, then released with low wooden groans. Beneath the floor sat a dark cedar box. Its corners were worn pale, and a small brass clasp had turned green with age. Piper leaned forward, sniffing. Through the narrow seam around the lid came the scent of cloth, cedar, and the wooden whistle Megan had once carried during their games. Edith recognized the box immediately. In the first years after Silver Lantern closed, before the fences went up, she had still possessed a key to the ticket booth. Her hands had been stronger then. She had carried the box there because the things inside made the rooms of her house feel too crowded with absence. Cole lifted it onto solid ground. "What did you put in it?" he asked. Edith rested both hands on the handle of her cane. "Things I meant to send." Her voice was steady, but only because she was holding it that way. Then Edith looked at the closed lid. "And one thing that was sent to me." Cole asked why she had left it beneath the booth for so long. The wind moved once through the copper tubes, but did not strike them together. Edith watched the box as though it had been waiting more faithfully than any person should have to wait. "Because I knew there was a letter inside," she said, "and I was never brave enough to open it." Piper sat beside the cedar box. The Ferris wheel stood silent above them, its empty gondolas catching the pale winter light. Cole had come to Silver Lantern to learn why a dog kept returning. Now he knew. Piper had not been running away from Edith's house. She had been following the last clear instruction Love had given her. Find Megan. And beneath the floor of the abandoned ticket booth rested the answer one human heart had been too afraid to read. Luke Danner would not allow the cedar box to remain beneath the ticket booth. Silver Lantern was entering the final stage before demolition, and every loose object had to be removed or recorded. Luke photographed the box where Cole found it, noted that Edith Rowan identified it as family property, and signed the transfer on his dented clipboard. By the third morning, the box sat in the center of Edith's kitchen table. Outside, light snow moved past the windows. Inside, the kettle warmed without boiling. Piper rested beneath Edith's chair, and Cole stood near the counter with his coat still on. The brass clasp had turned green around the edges. Edith placed both hands beside the box, but did not touch it. Cole did not rush her. Some doors became harder to open because a person had spent years convincing herself they were safer closed. At last, Edith lifted the clasp with the side of her thumb. The lid resisted, then released with a dry wooden sigh. The scent of cedar rose into the kitchen. On top lay a bundle of unused Silver Lantern tickets, tied with faded blue thread. Beneath them was the small wooden whistle Megan once carried while training Piper. Its surface had been polished smooth by years of use. Piper raised her head at the faint sound the whistle made when it rolled against the box. Edith caught it before it reached the table's edge. "She used to wear this around her neck," Edith said. "Megan could lose gloves, lunch money, and every pencil she owned. But never this." Under the whistle lay a family photograph taken in front of the ticket booth. Beth Rowan stood in the middle wearing her Silver Lantern vest and Silver Star name tag. Her daughter Megan leaned against one shoulder. Edith stood on the other side, younger and straighter, with Frank Rowan behind them holding a carpenter's level as though he had wandered into the picture from work. A puppy sat at their feet. Piper's ears were too large for her head, and her tongue hung out in a way that made seriousness impossible. Cole studied the photograph. No one in it looked prepared to become a memory. Edith set it aside. Next came a small German shepherd, carved from dark wood. Frank had shaped the ears unevenly, one standing straight, and the other leaning slightly outward, just like Piper's. The carving rested in Edith's palm for a moment, before she placed it beside the photograph. Then Cole saw the letters. 7 envelopes lay in a careful stack. Each bore Megan's name in Edith's narrow handwriting. None carried a stamp. None had been sealed. The first letter had been written soon after Megan left Snowmere. Edith did not read all of it aloud. She only unfolded the page far enough for Cole to see lines pressed deeply into the paper. "That one was angry," Edith said. "I believed anger would keep grief from noticing me." The letter accused Megan of abandoning Snowmere, Edith, and every responsibility Beth had left behind. Even now, Edith could not finish looking at it. The second letter was quieter. It told Megan that Piper had slept outside her old bedroom for 7 nights, lifting her head each time a vehicle passed on Pine Road. The third described the season's first snow and asked whether Alder Glen winters smelled different from home. The fourth asked whether Megan still remembered Beth's birthday. The fifth began with the words, "I am sorry." A heavy line had been drawn through them. Edith's fingers paused over the sentence. "I decided an apology needed explaining," she said. "By the time I finished explaining, it no longer sounded like one." The sixth letter mentioned the gate beginning to sag. Edith had written that she could fix it herself when the ground thawed. She had not written that her fingers were already struggling with the latch. The seventh envelope held only one line. Edith read it in a low voice. "I still leave the porch light on for your birthday." The kitchen grew still around the sentence. 7 attempts to cross the distance. 7 times Edith had stopped before the mailbox. Cole looked at the envelopes and thought of all the calls he had watched ring into silence. People often imagined abandonment as a person turning away once. More often, it was built from smaller choices, repeated until the distance felt permanent. Piper moved from beneath the chair and rested her chin on Edith's knee. Edith stroked the fur between the dog's ears. "There is one more," she said. Beneath the 7 unsent letters lay a sealed envelope. It had no postmark. Only Edith's name appeared on the front, written in Megan's hand. The paper had yellowed slightly at the corners. One side showed a faint watermark from snow or a wet glove. Edith had recognized the handwriting the morning she found it in the mailbox nearly 4 years earlier. She had carried it into the house. She had placed it in a drawer. Months later, when the sight of it became unbearable, she took it to Silver Lantern and buried it beneath the letter she had failed to send. Cole asked why she had never opened it. Edith looked at the envelope rather than him. "I thought it was goodbye. You didn't know that. I knew what I had said to her." Cole kept his voice even. "You still didn't know." Edith's eyes sharpened. "If I left it closed, there was still a chance it contained something else." The reasoning sounded impossible when spoken aloud, but Cole understood it. An unanswered question could be arranged into hope, accusation, or mercy depending on the hour. An answer removed that protection. Cole looked at the envelope. Not opening it was still a decision. Edith's hand went still on Piper's head. Then she turned the question back toward him. "Did you answer everyone who came looking for you?" Cole felt his thumb move toward the edge of his stopped watch. Edith noticed. She waited. Cole could have refused. He had known Edith for only 3 days. She had no right to his history. But that was the language frightened people used when truth had come too close. Cole told her about Aaron Pike. Years earlier, Aaron had been trapped inside a steel training compartment during an exercise at sea. Alarms had filled the passageway, but Cole heard 3 knocks through the metal and followed them. He found Aaron alive. He helped bring him out. For a long time, Cole had treated that moment as proof that he had done what friendship required. After both men left the Navy, Aaron began calling, sometimes late at night, sometimes on ordinary Sunday afternoons. Cole saw the name and let the phone ring. He told himself Aaron deserved a life untouched by old memories. He told himself talking would pull both of them backward. The truth was less noble. Cole had feared Aaron might describe the same emptiness Cole was hiding. If Aaron said it aloud, Cole would have to admit that surviving danger had not taught either man how to live afterward. "I thought silence gave him room," Cole said. Edith studied him across the table. "No," she replied. "You protected your silence and called it his peace." The words landed without cruelty. That made them harder to dismiss. Piper lifted her head from Edith's knee and looked between them. She did not understand Aaron, unread letters, or the pride of wounded people. She only knew that both humans had stopped moving. Piper pressed her muzzle more firmly against Edith's hand. Edith picked up the small wooden dog Frank had carved. She turned it over slowly. Letters were cut into the flat underside. Her husband's handwriting had been uneven near the end of his life, but the sentence remained clear. "Do not let pride turn love into silence." Edith closed her eyes. Frank had not written it for this morning. He had not known about Megan leaving or the envelope beneath 7 others. But some truths waited patiently until the people who needed them were finally tired enough to listen. Edith opened her eyes and reached for the letter opener beside the sugar bowl. Her hand trembled. Cole started to move, then stopped himself. He waited until Edith looked at him. "Would you hold the envelope?" she asked. Cole placed one hand lightly against the paper, while Edith guided the blade through the top edge. The sound was small. After 4 years, the barrier between them was no thicker than folded paper. Edith removed 2 handwritten pages. She began reading silently. Her eyes reached the first line and stopped. Cole saw her lips form the words before her voice found them. "Grandma, last winter I came back to Snowmere." Piper rose and rested against Edith's leg. Edith continued. Megan wrote that she had driven from Alder Glen, carrying the matching blue scarf. She reached Pine Road after dark and parked beyond the gate. The porch light was on. Through a partly open window, Megan heard Edith speaking on the telephone. "I do not need anyone coming back because they feel sorry for me," Edith had said. Megan believed the words were about her. She stood outside for nearly 10 minutes. Piper barked from inside the house, then scratched at the door. Megan came as far as the gate. She never opened it. Instead, she placed the letter in Edith's mailbox and drove away before the porch light went out. Edith lowered the pages. Cole asked whom she had actually been speaking to that night. "My niece in Vermont," Edith said. "She wanted me to move into a care home after I slipped beside the back steps." It had been a minor fall. No serious injury. But the family heard the word fall and began planning Edith's future without first asking what she wanted. Her angry refusal had been meant for them. Megan heard only one sentence and placed herself inside it. Edith found the envelope the next morning. She recognized Megan's writing, imagined the worst, and carried it into a silence already waiting to grow. For almost 4 years, both women had believed the other had chosen separation. They had once stood less than 20 yards apart. One inside the house, one outside the gate, both waiting for the other to cross first. "We lost nearly 4 years because of a sentence that was not even meant for her," Edith said. Cole looked at the 7 letters beside Megan's opened one. "Not only because of the sentence," Edith raised her eyes. "Because neither of you asked again," Cole said. The truth remained between them, but it no longer felt like a blade. It felt like an unlocked door neither person had yet entered. The telephone rang on the kitchen wall. Cora Mills was calling to remind Edith that only 1 day remained to complete Piper's safety plan before the county review process had to begin. Edith listened without arguing. She said she understood and promised to have an answer by morning. When she hung up, Piper placed one bandaged paw across Edith's slipper. Edith looked at Megan's letter, then at the 7 envelopes she had never sent. Her hands were still trembling, but they were no longer empty. "I may have more than one envelope to open," she said. Outside, snow continued falling across Pine Road. Inside, Edith began gathering the letters into a new order, not by the year they had been written, but by which truth she was finally willing to send first. By 8 the next morning, Edith Rowan's kitchen table held 3 cups of coffee, 1 blue county notebook, and a blank sheet of paper that Edith already disliked. Cora Mills sat nearest the window. Dale Foster occupied the chair beside the stove, his red thermos resting between his boots. Cole Tanner stood at the end of the table with a pen in one hand. Piper lay beneath Edith's chair. The German Shepherd's bandages had been removed. The shallow scratches on her paws were closing, though Cole noticed she still shifted her weight carefully before settling. Cora opened her notebook and explained that they needed a practical support plan before the county deadline expired that afternoon. Edith's mouth tightened at the word plan. When Cora referred to it as a senior care arrangement, Edith pushed the blank paper away. "I am not a project," she said. Cora did not argue. She closed the notebook and waited. Cole looked at Edith, then at Piper. The dog had needs that could not be ignored. Edith had rights that should not be erased simply because others were worried. He turned the paper back toward himself and wrote in large block letters, "Piper's walking and safety schedule." Then he placed the page where Edith could read it. The change was small. It changed everything. They were not organizing Edith's life around her weakness. They were organizing Piper's care around Edith's choices. Edith studied the heading. "That is less insulting," she said. Dale lifted his coffee. "High praise. We should frame it." Edith gave him a narrow look, but the corner of her mouth moved. The conversation began with Piper's exercise. A 7-year-old German Shepherd could not remain healthy with only short walks around the yard, and Edith could no longer manage icy paths safely every day. Dale volunteered for Monday mornings before his shift at the fire station. He already walked near Pine Road and claimed Piper would improve the quality of his route. Nora Wynne, a retired schoolteacher who lived 2 streets away, had agreed to Wednesday mornings. Nora was 68, brisk in movement, and famous for speaking to dogs with the same respectful seriousness she had once used with 4th graders. Friday presented a different possibility. Sam Reed was 16 and lived with his father near the village garage. He needed community service hours for a vocational scholarship. Edith had repaired one of Sam's winter coats the previous year after he caught the sleeve on a fence. Sam wanted to walk Piper in exchange for lessons in mending coats and patching gloves. Edith looked suspicious. "He wants sewing lessons?" "He wants to stop ruining every jacket he owns," Dale explained. "That is not the same thing." "No," Dale admitted, "but it may lead there." Edith agreed to meet the boy before placing his name on the schedule. Cole took responsibility for heavy snow days, gate inspections, and any morning when another volunteer could not come. Cora added an emergency call button near Edith's living room chair. It would connect to the county response service if Edith fell or became unable to reach the telephone. Edith objected immediately. "I am not wearing a device around my neck." Cora clarified that the button could remain on a side table. Edith would decide when to use it. No one would receive a key to the house unless Edith chose to give one. No one would change Piper's food, medicine, veterinary appointments, or routine without consulting Edith. Edith would personally hand Piper's leash to each walker. If the silver lantern bells sounded, the walker would hold the lid securely and redirect Piper without shouting or dragging her. Each rule returned something the previous conversation had threatened to take: choice, authority, and the right to remain the central person in Piper's life. Cora wrote carefully. "Safety does not require surrender," she said. "It requires knowing who does what before something goes wrong." Edith glanced down at Piper. The dog's head rested across one of Edith's shoes. She had been silent through the entire meeting, but her position made one truth plain. Whatever schedule the humans created, Piper still understood whose home this was. By late morning, Nora and Sam arrived to meet her. Nora Wynne wore a blue wool coat and carried a small pouch of dog treats she did not offer immediately. She stood several feet away and allowed Piper to approach first. Piper smelled Nora's gloves, boots, and coat hem. Then she looked at Edith. Edith took the leash from its hook. "This is Nora," Edith told the dog. "She talks too much, but she is reliable." Nora accepted the description as though it were a formal recommendation. Edith placed the leash in her hand. Only then did Piper walk through the gate. They went no farther than the end of Pine Road before returning. The trial was brief, but it established the pattern. No one took Piper from Edith. Edith entrusted Piper to them. Sam's meeting required more patience. The teenager arrived in a patched brown jacket, long dark hair escaping from beneath a knit cap. He kept his hands in his pockets and tried not to appear nervous. Piper circled him once and stopped. Sam looked toward Cole. "What do I do?" Cole answered indirectly, telling Sam to stand still and let Piper gather information. The dog smelled the torn seam near Sam's pocket, then sneezed. Dale claimed it was a professional opinion on the repair work. Sam laughed, and the tension left his shoulders. Edith called him closer. Before handing over the leash, she made him promise never to pull Piper by the collar and never to use his phone while crossing the road. Sam agreed. Edith then touched the ripped pocket on his jacket. "Friday afternoon," she said. "Bring this and 2 pairs of gloves. If you are going to walk my dog, you will learn not to dress like the wind has defeated you." Sam accepted the condition. Piper followed him through the gate only after Edith released the leash. Cole watched the exchange and understood that the schedule was already doing more than protecting a dog. It gave Sam a teacher, Nora a reason to walk through winter, and Edith a way to keep offering something of value. Sometimes community did not begin with a grand promise. Sometimes it began with a leash, passed carefully from one hand to another. Cora reviewed the completed page. She signed the bottom and changed the county file from formal risk review to voluntary monitoring. The case would remain open until the first follow-up, but Piper would not be moved. Edith kept her home. She kept her dog. More importantly, she kept the right to decide how help entered her life. After Cora and Dale left, Edith returned to the 7 letters on the kitchen table. She did not choose the longest letter. She did not choose the apology with the words crossed out. She selected the 6th one, the letter about Piper, the sagging gait, and the winter when her hands first began to fail her. Edith read it again, then added a new page. She wrote that Piper still waited whenever the bells sounded. She explained that the gate had been repaired, but not before Piper escaped once too often. She wrote that her hands were no longer as strong as they had been. The sentence took her 3 attempts. The first sounded apologetic. The second sounded defiant. The third simply told the truth. Edith wrote that she had opened Megan's old letter. She admitted that fear had kept it sealed and pride had allowed the years afterward to pass. At the end, she wrote, "I do not know how to begin again, except by saying I was wrong not to open what you sent." Cole drove Edith to the Snowmere shipping office before noon. She paid for urgent delivery to the restoration workshop in Alder Glen where Megan worked. Cole enclosed a separate note with his name and telephone number. The note did not explain the family history. It stated only that he had been present when Piper was rescued, that Silver Lantern's Ferris wheel would be dismantled the next morning, and that Megan could call him if she needed factual information. Edith placed the envelope on the counter herself. When the clerk took it, Edith kept her hand beneath it for 1 extra second. Then she let go. The letter became the first of the 7 to leave Snowmere. Late that afternoon, Cole was inside his workshop when his phone rang. The caller identification showed an Alder Glen number. He answered. The woman on the line introduced herself as Megan Rowan. Her voice was clear and controlled, but anger sat close beneath it. Megan did not thank him for helping Piper. She asked why a stranger had involved himself in a private family matter. Cole told her Edith had written the letter herself and chosen to send it. He had only provided contact information. Megan replied that an elderly woman, an injured dog, and a demolition deadline created their own kind of pressure. She accused Cole of arranging circumstances so that refusing to return would make her look heartless. Cole did not defend Edith as though she had done nothing wrong. He did not accuse Megan of abandonment. Instead, he gave her the facts in the order they had occurred. Piper heard the old bells and left Pine Road. She entered the lowest Ferris wheel gondola to reach a piece of blue scarf beneath the seat. The weakened brake released in mountain wind. The wheel turned and trapped Piper nearly 30 feet above the ground. The dog had struck the metal wall 3 times until Cole heard her. Silver Lantern would be dismantled the next morning. Edith had finally opened Megan's letter. The line went quiet. Cole heard movement in the background, perhaps the workshop door closing or a tool being placed on wood. When Megan spoke again, the anger had thinned enough for fear to show through. Does she actually need me? Cole looked through his workshop window toward the white roofs of Snowmere. She needs help, he said. But no one drives 5 hours through snow because another person needs a jar opened. Megan did not answer. Cole added only one more thing. Piper does not need another promise. She needs an answer to the old one. The call ended without Megan saying whether she would come. Cole did not telephone Edith. There was nothing certain to report, and he had learned that hope could become another form of pressure when handed to someone too early. Evening settled across Snowmere. The temperature dropped. Wind pushed loose snow along the road in thin white streams. Near midnight, Cole's phone lit beside his stopped watch. A message from Megan appeared. I left Alder Glen. Do not tell her yet. Before Cole could respond, the village emergency system issued a weather alert. Heavy snow was moving across the northern pass. Visibility would worsen before dawn. 2 sections of the mountain road might close if the wind strengthened. Cole read Megan's message again. She had trusted him with her decision and asked him to keep it private. Across the room, the old clock above his workbench marked each second cleanly. Cole thought of Aaron Pike's unanswered calls. He thought of Edith standing inside her house, while Megan once waited beyond the gate. He thought of how often people renamed silence as protection because they were afraid of what truth might require next. For now, he typed only, drive carefully. Call if the road closes. Then Cole placed the phone beside his stopped watch and remained at the workbench, caught between a promise to keep quiet and the knowledge that silence had already taken too much from everyone involved. By dawn on the 5th day, Snowmere had disappeared beneath fresh snow. The roofs were white, the pines carried heavy branches, and the road toward the northern pass had been reduced to 2 dark tire tracks. At Silver Lantern, Luke Danner's crew had already placed a second fence around the Ferris wheel. If the wind stayed below the safety limit, the first support cables would be released before noon. Megan Rowan had not reached Pine Road. Cole Tanner had slept little. He had called her twice after sunrise, but each attempt went directly to silence. He did not know whether she had turned back, stopped behind a closed section of mountain road, or already entered Snowmere without telling him. He had respected her request and said nothing to Edith. Now the promise felt heavier. Inside Edith's house, Piper lay near the fireplace, while Edith pretended to read the same page of a book. Neither of them was resting. Cole stood near the front window, watching the road. Piper suddenly raised her head. The German shepherd did not turn north toward Silver Lantern, as she had whenever the copper bells sounded. She rose, crossed the room, and pressed her nose to the narrow gap beneath the front door. Her breathing quickened. Then Piper lifted one paw and scratched the wood 3 times. Cole opened the door. Cold air moved through the hallway. Fresh tire marks crossed the road outside, cutting through snow that had fallen less than an hour earlier. The tracks passed Edith's gate, continued toward the village, then turned onto the road, leading to Silver Lantern. Someone had come to Pine Road. Someone had not stopped. Cole looked back at Edith. She was watching him over the top of the book. "I need to check the park," he said. Edith did not ask why. Perhaps Hope had already taught her not to move too quickly. Dale Foster arrived minutes later to take Piper. Cole followed the new tracks in his pickup, keeping his speed low on the snow-packed road. A dark vehicle stood outside Silver Lantern's outer fence. A woman waited beside it. Megan Rowan wore a forest green winter coat and the blue scarf from the photograph around her neck. Snow had gathered in her chestnut hair. One hand rested on the locked gate, but she made no attempt to enter. She looked younger than Cole expected and more tired than 29 should have allowed. Luke met Cole at the work entrance. He agreed to let Megan use the inspected path to the old ticket booth, but no farther. The Ferris wheel remained an active work zone. Megan followed Cole through the gate. She stopped beneath the faded silver star above the booth. The 3 copper tubes hung motionless under the roof. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then Megan admitted that she had already driven past Edith's house twice. The first time, she saw the porch light burning through the snow. The second time, she saw Edith's shape behind the curtain. Both times, Megan kept driving. She had crossed 5 hours of winter road, yet the final few yards still felt impossible. "I do not know why she wants me there," Megan said. Cole waited. Megan explained that Edith needed help now. The repaired gate, the walking schedule, the county review. Each detail made Megan fear that the letter had come from necessity rather than love. She could return to open jars, shovel snow, or take Piper to the veterinarian. What she did not know was whether Edith wanted the granddaughter who had left. Cole did not offer false reassurance. "She needs help," he said. "But that is not why she sent the letter." Megan looked toward him. "Then why did she send it?" Before Cole answered, movement appeared near the main gate. Dale was walking Piper along the safe path. The dog saw Megan from almost 50 yards away and stopped. Her head rose. Her nose tested the air. The straight right ear faced forward while the left tip leaned outward. Piper did not pull. 5 years had changed Megan's scent. City air, paint, cold wool, unfamiliar rooms, and time itself had settled over what the dog remembered. But something remained. Cole watched Piper's body shift from uncertainty toward recognition. "She was tired of pretending she did not miss you," he told Megan. Dale brought Piper closer and handed the lead to Cole. Megan knelt in the snow. Her hands trembled before she spoke. "Piper." The voice completed what scent had begun. Piper crossed the last few steps and pressed her forehead against Megan's chest. She did not leap or bark. She stood there, weight leaning forward, as though confirming that the person beneath the blue scarf was real. Megan buried both hands in the thick fur around Piper's neck. For a moment, the abandoned park fell quiet around them. There were reunions that demanded shouting. This one had waited too long for noise. Piper pulled back first. She looked at Megan, then turned toward the road leading to Pine Road. The dog gave the leash one steady pull in that direction. Megan wiped her face with the back of one glove. "She wants to go home." Cole opened the passenger door of his truck. "She wants all of you in the same place." He did not tell Megan to get in. He simply waited until she chose. At Edith's house, Piper stepped onto the porch first. Megan remained at the bottom of the steps. Behind the front window, Edith stood with one hand resting on the curtain. She had seen the truck arrive. She had seen Megan step out. Still, the door remained closed. Megan climbed one step, then another. She reached the porch and lifted her hand. She could not knock. Inside, Edith moved toward the door. Her hand closed around the new wide handle Cole had installed, but she did not press it down. 4 years earlier, Megan had stood outside the same house and waited. Edith had stood inside without knowing. Now both women knew, and still neither could begin. Piper looked from Megan to the door. Then she raised one paw. Scratch, scratch, scratch. The familiar signal was not wisdom beyond a dog's nature. Piper had been trained to begin a search that way. Yet after 5 years, the sound carried everything the two women had failed to say. The handle moved. Edith opened the door. Her burgundy cardigan was buttoned unevenly, as though her hands had lost patience halfway through. She looked at Megan's thin coat, wet hair, and blue scarf. "You still do not dress warmly enough," Edith said. Megan gave a broken breath that almost became a laugh. "You still begin with a complaint." Edith held the door wider. "If I begin with anything else, I may not be able to speak." Megan stepped onto the porch. Piper placed herself between them. Megan lowered to one knee, while Edith sat in the chair beside the entrance. The dog rested her head across their separated hands. Edith's fingers reached Piper's left ear at the same moment Megan touched the right. Their hands met in the fur. Megan apologized first. She said she had left because every street in Snowmere reminded her of Beth, but also because leaving was easier than admitting she did not know how to grieve beside Edith. Edith did not say everything was forgiven. Instead, she admitted that she had taken Megan's silence and used it as proof that her granddaughter no longer loved her. It had been easier than opening the letter and risking a different answer. Megan explained that her first apartment truly had forbidden dogs, but that was not the only reason Piper stayed. Megan had believed Edith needed a living creature that depended on her. She thought Piper would keep her grandmother rising each morning, when grief made the bed feel safer than the day. Edith looked down at the dog between them. "She spent 5 years keeping both of us," she said. The words were gentle enough to make room for sorrow without allowing it to own the room. Megan asked whether Edith wanted her to stay. Edith did not answer with forever. Forever had already failed them once. "I want you here today," Edith said. "Tomorrow, we can learn to ask again." Megan stepped inside. Near late morning, Luke allowed Edith and Megan to stand together in the designated observation area at Silver Lantern. Dale remained with them, and Piper wore a secure chest harness. The Ferris wheel rose above the snow for the final time. Megan asked whether the town could preserve it. Cole gave her the truth. The metal had suffered fatigue. The foundation was failing, and the mechanical system could not be made safe without rebuilding nearly everything. Keeping it upright for memory would place future visitors beneath a danger they could not see. Edith accepted the answer before Megan did. "Not every old thing needs to be saved whole," she said. Her gaze moved to the lowest gondola. "But perhaps one place to sit can still be useful." Luke studied the gondola. He explained that the town could request permission to retain it. The paint would need testing, the mechanical pieces removed, and the frame reinforced before it could become public seating. It was not a promise. It was a possible next use. For once, that was enough. The wind shifted. The 3 copper tubes beneath the ticket booth rang. Clang, clang, clang. Piper lifted her head. Megan held her breath, expecting the dog to pull toward the booth. Piper looked first at Megan, then at Edith. Both women were standing beside her. The German Shepherd turned once in the snow and lay down between their boots. The sound no longer meant someone was missing. The person Piper had been trained to find had finally answered. Above them, the Ferris wheel waited for the workers to begin. It would not survive the day in its old form. But beneath it, a promise had already been kept. And perhaps that was how grace sometimes worked, not by preserving everything that had once been loved, but by bringing the people home before the old structure had to come down. Silver Lantern came down without ceremony. There was no final ride, no music, and no last turning of the Ferris wheel against the winter sky. Luke Danner's crew worked slowly, lowering each section by cable, while Cole Tanner watched the load points and checked the old steel for unexpected movement. The people of Snowmere gathered behind the safety fence. Some remembered first dates beneath those silver lights. Others remembered children waving from the gondolas, or Beth Rowan passing tickets through the booth window with a smile that made every family feel expected. Memory made the silence heavier. It did not make the structure safe. By late afternoon, the Ferris wheel no longer stood above the pines. Its sections rested on timber blocks, tagged for recycling or controlled disposal. One gondola had been set apart. Luke completed the town paperwork over the next several days. The gondola belonged to Snowmere, and turning it into public seating required more than a good idea. Its paint needed testing. The frame needed inspection. Every mechanical part had to be removed. Only after the town council approved the plan did Luke arrange for the gondola to be delivered to the public workshop, where Cole repaired bridges, railings, doors, and whatever else the village had allowed to grow old. The work lasted several weeks. Cole removed the axle, bearings, mounting brackets, and hidden pieces that could trap a hand or collect ice. He cut away damaged steel, then reinforced the frame without changing its familiar shape. Luke had the old paint tested and professionally sealed. Sharp edges were rounded. The rusted floor was replaced with cedar boards treated for winter weather. Megan Rowan worked on the faded silver star painted along one side. She returned to Alder Glen after the reunion, but came back the following weekend carrying brushes, sanding cloth, and the wooden-handled scraper that had belonged to her mother. Megan did not erase every scratch. She cleaned the surface, stabilized the paint, and restored only what was needed for the star to be visible again. Old things should be allowed to look old, she told Cole while working. Cole looked at the repaired steel beneath the gondola. As long as they are not allowed to fall on anyone. Megan smiled. That sounds like the closest you come to poetry. Cole did not answer. He had already turned toward a loose screw that did not need his immediate attention. Edith Rowan contributed from her own kitchen table. She opened Beth's sewing box and selected pieces of durable blue fabric left from old silver lantern uniforms. With Sam Reed beside her, Edith measured, cut, and joined the material into a long seat cushion. Her hands were slower than they had once been. On colder mornings, Sam threaded the needle or held the fabric steady while Edith guided the seam. She did not apologize for kneading his fingers. In return, Edith taught Sam how to repair a torn coat pocket, so the stitching followed the original line. She made him remove the first attempt and begin again. Strong thread does not excuse careless work, Edith told him. Sam complained, but he returned the next Friday. Piper usually lay beneath the table during the lessons, lifting her head whenever Sam dropped a spool. The walking schedule also settled into ordinary life. Dale Foster arrived on Monday mornings, often 10 minutes too early. Edith complained each time, then poured enough coffee for two. Nora Wynne took Piper on Wednesdays. The retired teacher narrated each walk as though Piper needed a full report on road conditions, bird behavior, and village maintenance. On Fridays, Sam collected the leash only after Edith checked his repaired clothing. Piper continued looking at Edith before crossing the gate with anyone. Edith still placed the leash directly into each walker's hand. The schedule had not removed her authority. It had made that authority easier to carry. Cora Mills returned for the county follow-up and found the gate secure, the plan functioning, and Piper healthy. She moved the case to routine monitoring. Edith no longer watched Cora's blue notebook as though it contained a threat. Instead, she asked Cora which county service could install a second handrail beside the back steps. The question surprised both women. Edith noticed. "Do not look pleased," she warned. "I am requesting a railing, not surrendering the house." Cora removed her glasses and cleaned them to hide a smile. Megan did not move permanently back to Snowmere. Neither woman wanted guilt to make decisions that love would later have to repair. Megan arranged to work remotely from Edith's house for 1 week each month. She called every Sunday evening, even when neither of them had much to report. Some conversations lasted 10 minutes. Others lasted an hour, because Megan finally began telling stories about Beth. At first, Edith corrected details. Beth had worn the blue vest on Saturdays, not Fridays. The ticket booth roof had leaked on the east side, not the west. Megan had been 9, not 10, when she painted a silver star on Piper's first wooden food box. Then one evening, Edith let Megan finish a story without correcting anything. That was its own kind of mercy. Megan also found a small rental cottage near Snowmere that allowed dogs. Piper could stay there when Edith needed medical appointments, rest, or simply a quiet day without managing a large animal. Edith continued living on Pine Road. She still measured Piper's food, chose the veterinarian, brushed the black and tan coat, and decided who entered her home. But she learned a sentence she had once treated as defeat. Today, I need help. Sometimes she said it to Dale when snow covered the steps. Sometimes she said it to Megan when a jar would not open. Once, she said it to Sam when a heavy sewing machine needed moving. Each time, the world remained standing. Her dignity did not leave the room. It made space for someone else to enter. The finished Ferris gondola was installed in Snowmere's village square beneath an old iron street lamp. The open side faced the mountains. The repaired cedar floor and blue cushion turned the former passenger car into a wide bench. Above it, Luke mounted the 3 copper tubes from the silver lantern ticket booth. On the gondola's inner wall, Megan painted the words Frank Rowan had carved beneath the wooden dog. Do not let pride turn love into silence. There was no dedication ceremony, no ribbon. One morning, the fence around the bench was simply gone, and the people of Snowmere began using it. Older residents sat there with grocery bags beside them. Children climbed onto the cushion while parents watched. Sam occasionally inspected the stitching, as if he had completed more of it than he had. Piper preferred the space beneath the bench, where the metal curved enough to block the wind. One afternoon, Cole arrived carrying 3 paper cups of coffee. Edith sat on one side of the gondola bench. Megan sat on the other, staying in Snowmere for her monthly week. Piper lay between their boots. Cole handed out the cups, checked a bolt near the base, and straightened. Finished, he said, though no one had asked him to repair anything. He turned toward the public workshop. Edith moved closer to Megan, leaving an open place beside her. The bench has room, Edith said. Cole looked toward the road. He could have named 6 tasks waiting at the shop. 2 of them were real. 4 could have waited until spring. Piper opened her eyes. The dog did not stand or block his path. She simply watched him with the same steady patience she had shown from the Ferris gondola. Cole sat down. A breeze crossed the square. The copper tubes rang 3 times. Clang, clang, clang. Piper lifted her head. She looked first at Edith, then Megan, then Cole. When she found everyone still there, she lowered her head onto her paws. That evening, Piper stayed at Cole's cabin because Edith had an early appointment to have her joints examined. Megan would collect the dog after breakfast. Cole sat alone at his kitchen table while Piper rested near the door. His old stopped watch lay beside his phone. For years, Cole had treated Aaron Pike's number like another locked structure, something safest left untouched, because opening it might reveal damage he could not repair. But Edith had opened Megan's letter. Megan had crossed the mountain road. A dog had trusted the same signal long after the humans had stopped trusting one another. Cole found Aaron's name. He did not write a long explanation. Long explanations had often been his way of delaying honest sentences. He typed, "I was silent too long. If you still want to talk, this time I will listen." Cole sent it before fear could improve the wording. The phone remained still for several minutes. Piper slept. Then the screen lit. Aaron's reply contained no accusation, no dramatic forgiveness, Only a time and a short message. Tomorrow evening works. I wondered if you would ever answer. Cole read it twice. He sat on the floor beside Piper and rested one hand against the dog's shoulder. Then he began typing his answer. Weeks later, morning light spread over the snow in Snowmere's square. Edith and Megan sat together on the old gondola bench. They still disagreed. Megan believed Edith needed a warmer coat. Edith believed Megan drove too fast. Both remained certain the other made coffee incorrectly. They sometimes chose poor words, but they no longer used silence as proof that love had disappeared. Piper slept beneath their feet. Cole approached with coffee and sat down before anyone invited him. He had once believed heroism was measured by the dangerous places a man was willing to enter, the height he would climb, the weight he would carry, the life he could return safely to the ground. Those things mattered. But courage also lived in quieter acts, admitting age without surrendering dignity, opening a letter that might cause pain, sending one without knowing whether it would be answered, returning home when the door might remain closed, knocking before pride could lower the hand, and staying when there was nothing left to repair. Piper had returned to Silver Lantern because 3 bells meant someone was waiting to be found. In the end, she taught Snowmere that people did not have to be trapped high above the ground to need rescuing. Sometimes they stood on opposite sides of the same door, each waiting for the other to knock first. The breeze moved through the square. 3 copper notes rose into the clear winter morning. This time, no one was missing. Sometimes the hardest door to open is not made of wood. It is the silence between 2 people who are both waiting for the other to speak first. This story reminds us that love is not always lost. Sometimes it is only waiting for one honest sentence, one phone call, or one hand willing to knock. May God give us the courage to speak before pride steals another day, and the grace to listen when someone finally comes home. What did Piper's story mean to you? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more stories of loyalty, healing, and second chances. May peace find your home tonight.